Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is a Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines, but most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Wednesday, everybody. We are back in studio finally, and we are going to be back here for the foreseeable future because we just wrapped up the Freight Coach Roadshow, as I always like to call it. And we were at, three different conferences in 3 weeks. We were out there at Technovations in Jacksonville. Then we were at DatCon in Kansas City. And then finally, we wrapped up at the NMFTA Cybersecurity Conference in Cleveland here, which was on Monday and Tuesday. And it's been a whirlwind, right? And because, on top of all of that, I still have a business to run, and it's wild to really go in and start doing a lot of this stuff, right? Because we're actively moving freight, the brokerage is growing and everything. And, then going out there, speaking at, these events, doing my show at these events and everything, and getting out there, it's a good kind of busy, but it's also kind of like, I think I hit my limit. I'm gonna be honest. I think I hit my limit of 3 different events in 3 consecutive weeks on top of everything I have going on with the freight brokerage. So you got to learn from a lot of this stuff ultimately on how to go and how to really get this up and running, right? And I always go back to when I first started doing all of this, I was literally, I had just moved to Arizona. I was in my apartment bedroom when I first started creating content and I first started doing everything, and nobody listened, right? Nobody download, it was hard to get guests, all of that stuff. It was a wild journey, right? And I was asked at one of these conferences about about the podcast, like how's it going? What does it look like? What does it actually take to do it? And for me, it was at first it was a lot, right? Because I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what a podcast was. I didn't know how to edit anything. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. And through this journey, I taught myself how to edit. I taught myself how to do all of this stuff. And it just takes a long time to get up there. And I now it's to the point where finding guests isn't a challenge. Getting people to come on or wanting people to come on, and because it's a real thing now. And I'm realizing that the more I get out on the road, because I don't understand how where the reach is, and I don't understand where all of that stuff, how far it goes, because I'm in my own world, right? I'm out here, I do the show, then I'm cold calling, I'm moving freight, I'm doing all of that. So it's I never really realized what this show is until I'm out in speaking with people. But it's what you see now, it's 4 years in the making, right? I'm very fortunate to have my guy Christian, who's on my team here, who does all my marketing stuff now. So now I just record, right? So it's the system that I built out to where it's I just find a guest, I record, he does pre-episode production, post-episode production, he distributes all of my content, he does all of that. But that took a long time to kind of build this up. And I talked to other podcasters in the industry and just other podcasters in general about it. And it takes a really long time, and you have to develop your own style with a lot of it, right? Because at least for me, with my personality, I need to figure it out on my own. But most importantly, I need to fuck it all up on my own before I actually realize what's needed and what's not needed and stuff like that. And, you have to be dedicated to doing this for a very long time. And then ultimately it's like, what's your end goal? Because if your end goal to doing a lot of this stuff is to get famous and to be famous, I think you're gonna have a really hard time kind of growing anything out there. I could give two shits less about the recognition of like fame and everything else. I just want to build the most impactful business that I possibly can that benefits, obviously benefits me and my family because, let's just be real with that, but also benefits as everybody who comes in contact with it. And I think if you're going to go out there and do anything and build anything, like, it's okay to naturally feel that way, right? Like, oh, hey, I want to get rich. I want to do all of that because of course, right? Money's phenomenal. But I feel like, ultimately what are you trying to do with it? Is your mission with a lot of this stuff self-serving, or is this mission out there to truly like make a difference out there? And, and then on top of that, even if your intentions are right, it still takes a very, very long time to do anything, right? Because realistically, I mean, I didn't have my first like real good download month for, it was probably like 16, 17 months in. It was ironically when I like got my first couple of advertisers, and when I actually broke even in my business, it was around that time. That's when I like actually started to see some growth. So it's like, you just because you hit record doesn't mean that, you're gonna just miraculously have a following or, listeners or any of that stuff. It takes a really long time. And, I didn't get my first like speaking thing from the show and from all of that. It was like 2 years in by the time I did my first one, right? So it's like, that it's a long process to kind of build this stuff up, right? Ultimately. And I'm just kind of recapping the shows and, and just kind of what I'm thinking this morning, because it's like I see a lot of this stuff and I hear it, when I'm talking to people, like they want to do certain things. Whether it's they want to speak at conferences or they want to, do a podcast or they want to do all of this stuff, but they don't want to put in the work required that it takes to get there, right? Like ultimately, it takes a really long time to get anything to kind of show up from this, right? Now, you guys might see, the advertisers that I have on my show, and all of this stuff that took a very long time to get there. But I also treat this like a business, right? Like this isn't just a hobby to me, like this is a portion of my livelihood. This is how I provide for my family. So I take this very, very seriously, and I've built a real business out of all of this. And, I look at it as, it took a very long time to get to this point. Like I can say with confidence now, it took me probably 4 years. So as of April this year, it took me about 4 years to where I finally felt like, all right, this is something that there's systems in place. There's some consistency that's coming all along with this business, right? I'm not really necessarily shooting from the hip on a lot of my stuff, a lot of my content, a lot of these podcasts. It's very strategic now, and it also helps that I have people that that are on my team that make that possible, right? So it took 4 years. It took a ton of stuff, and it takes a lot of work to really get it up and running. And you got to be willing to sound ridiculous on on your show. You got to be willing to get people talk shit, which doesn't happen often, right? Like nobody actually talks shit. And like I say, all the time, if you're going to talk shit to me online, there's like a 0% chance you're going to come up and say it to my fucking face in person. So go ahead and be a keyboard warrior all you want. But who cares about any of that stuff though? Ultimately, you gotta be willing to commit to this stuff. You gotta be willing to do the stuff that others aren't willing to do. And that's something that I pride myself on, where it's like, I like the opportunities that come about now. Like I don't take this lightly, right? Like, the NMFTA, I was just at their cybersecurity conference. Obviously you guys know this, you guys watch the show, but they were the first organization that was like, hey, we want you to come do your show at our event. And hey, but we'll cover your flight and your hotel as well. How does that sound? And I'm like, fucking sign me right up, you know? But I take that very seriously, you know, like that when I'm at those events, you know, like I'm not a fucking drunk slob walking around at a conference, and you know, I'm not entitled to any of this stuff, right? So it's like I take this very seriously. I approach this as a professional because that's what I am. I am a fucking professional at the end of the day. And I want my product that is out there, that's how this grows, right? And I was talking to somebody the other day about, you know, because they were asking about advertisers and everything else. And you know, as I always say to anybody, if you're going to start creating content, if you're going to start doing any of this, you better be willing to do it for free for a very, very, very long time, because you know people don't just pay you money because you hit record, right? Like there has to be some substance behind that. And then on top of that, though, you know, what is your mission? Like I have over 4 years of like data that I can show potential advertisers now. I have 4 years of a track record that shows that like I'm not going to go off the fucking rails on certain things, you know, and just post nonsense and stuff like that, because every single logo that's on this screen and that advertises on this show, it's a risk for them to come out and advertise on anybody, right? Because you just never know. It's the brand association that's with that. So like I take this stuff very, very seriously. You know, and it if you listen to this and you hear me dropping F-bombs and everything else, everybody's aware of that when they come into it. But I'm legitimately coming out there, and I've got a data now. I've got all of this stuff now that shows that this is my intent behind everything. It's education first. You know, I have a long track record now of showing that I'm going to stay on course, and this is what this is all about. So I think, you know, as you're kind of going out there, and you know, I didn't even think like doing this show at people's conferences was a thing. I didn't ever, like when I first started doing all of this stuff, the idea of getting invited to speak at a conference to talk about freight sales or any of the stuff that I do, that wasn't even a thought. That's an after effect of doing the work day in and day out, and then, you know, making sure that your brand, because you know, I saw some posts about that as well, about building your brand, yada yada yada. You can't be a reckless asshole, you know, and have no substance behind it and expect to build a brand out there, you know. So I think like if you're going to want to do this, if you know, because everybody's got a story to tell ultimately, and if you want to document your journey and put that out there, do it. Start with that, and eventually in time, people, it's going to gain traction, and then you know it's going to get to the point where you know you have people who want you to come to their events and you know, maybe do your podcast at their events, or maybe speak at their events and everything else. Social media is a great tool to do all of that and to achieve all of your goals out there. So let, if anything, let my journey be the example of what you can do with a lot of this, because like I didn't have a recognizable name in the industry. I didn't network for shit. I worked in the industry for a long time, but I was just somebody who was just working in it. And if I can do this, anybody can do this, right? Ultimately, but you got to be committed to it. You need to be willing to put in the work. You need to be willing to, you know, travel on your own dime in a lot more instances than not. Okay. Like just because you know, there's a few of them that do, not a lot of them will, you know, and you got to be willing to do that. You got to be willing to invest in that, and take care of a lot of that stuff. And I think that it's worth it though. Ultimately, you know, it's worth it. I love it. I love being out there. I love interviewing people in person. I love doing this every single day. Like I'm very fortunate. I'm very fortunate for everybody who tunes into this show day in and day out to listen to this. And um, you know, it's, I don't take this lightly. You know, like I guess ultimately this 15-minute ramble here now is I don't take any of this stuff lightly. And if you want to do any of this stuff, you can jump out there and start, because ultimately, you know, it's pretty fucking cool to be a part of this. And you know, it's very doable. It's very attainable for anybody else out there. You just need to be willing to put in way more work than you think, and then deal with way more uncertainty than anything, because ultimately you're the only one that's going to stop you. You're the only one. Nobody else out there really cares. If you want to do something, you got to set it out there and you got to build it up. You got to build that system. You got to be willing to fail repeatedly. But most importantly, you learn how to do things differently. I frame it up like this. I'm not going to sit there and say like, oh, there's no such thing as failure. There is. You fucking fail a lot. But I also have framed it up to this, you guys. I'm just learning a lot of ways of what not to do. And I will always say knowing what not to do is more valuable than knowing what to do. And, you could say that, I went to public school, so you can make up any fucking analogy that you want with that. But that's how I've lived everything over these last couple of years. Is I'm just learning a lot of what not to do, and fail early and fail fast. I think that's another thing too, because it's not like you're not just going to figure it all out. You're not going to have a perfect plan. And that's the same thing with, creating content or, starting a podcast or doing any of this. It's not going to be perfect, but fuck it. Just keep going, hit record, do what you got to do and make it happen. And I think the more that you can do that, the more that you can hold yourself to that it's like, hey, it's okay to not know everything, but you'll figure it out. I think that's, like I said, it took me 4 years to finally feel like I have an actual system and a process that I can follow with this show, with this media, and to really grow and scale, and in being able to strategically look at things and make better decisions for the show, the direction of it, the marketing aspect of this as well, like all the social media platforms, kind of getting in on what's working from a content strategy. It took a very long time. And I taught myself how to do all of it. I taught myself how to edit. Like I said, I taught myself how to do all of that stuff. But now I'm at a point where, I have a guy on my staff, and we're going to be growing this out as well. Because I have some other wild fucking ideas that I want to do with it. But, it takes a very long time to do that. But once you get to that point, that's where all the fun starts. It truly does. You just have to be committed to do it way longer than you want. And you have to be committed to the fact that it's not going to be easy. You're going to fail. But you're going to learn ultimately. So you got to keep with that. But, got some comment. Eric Ransom, what is up? Happy hump day. Corey Buchan, happy hump day. Connor, my man, what is going on? Good morning, sir. Dylan Turner, what is up? Sonny Sharma from Pittsburgh. Get some, Sonny. Lamar Watts says, my work ethic is holding my growth back. I get to my computer, work for 2 hours, and then get lazy. That's a you problem, Lamar. Dude, I there is nothing I can say about that. That you got to figure that out like quick, or you got to find out what it is you actually want to do in life that makes you want to, makes your work ethic a compliment. Like I love doing this, right? Like I love freight. I love cold calling. I love everything about transportation. Maybe it's just that, man. Maybe you got to find something that gets you that natural passion to kind of build up and go. Scott Watanabe, my freight sensei in the house. Happy hump day, my guy. Yeah. So, I think, excuse me. I also wanted to talk about the power of networking as well. Ed Milet has a great book called The Power of One More. There's a bunch, but like he's somebody who I would highly recommend you guys all follow. Buy his book, The Power of One More. Listen to his podcast, do all of that. But you are truly one conversation away from changing your life. I'll use the NMFTA example again. I mean, Caroline Lyle, my girl, shout out to her. She reached out, a few years ago, and it was just saying yes at that moment of like, yeah, fuck it, let's talk, right? And it was doing that, and that's ultimately how all of this goes, right? You're one conversation away from changing your life. You're one phone call away from changing your life, and I can attribute that to every single advertiser that I have. Right? It was that one. I mean, I will never forget this. Like my relationship with SPI runs real deep, real deep. And it all came because I was speaking at a conference in Orlando a couple of years ago, and Mike Mikulik and James Lemon walked up to me, and they're like just asking about the show and everything. And I didn't even know what SPI was before then. but they loved what I was doing. They had been watching the show for a long time, and it was saying yes to that one more opportunity that got me out there where we met. And then now it's like, I mean, SPI is my longest standing advertiser. Like I said, we run deep together. My relationship is very deep with them. That's who my brokerage is through and everything. And that was just based off of one conversation that just happened to happen at a conference. Same thing with green screens. I've had a really long relationship with Matt Silver, over at green screens. And that's how this all started is, they were on the show, and then it just all went up from there, all because I said yes to a one conversation. Same thing with Denim. Denim reached out to me. And this is crazy. They were doing an offsite in Phoenix here where I live, and Jamie Neely reached out to me and was like, "Hey, can you come? I know you're local in Phoenix. We'd love for you to come and talk about, your experience in freight brokerage to our team." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." I said yes to that. And then 6 months later, I'm at another conference, and my girl Emily Watkins over at Denim hits me up, and she's like, "Hey, let's meet up. I want to talk about, doing a potential advertisement with you." And that's all just started because I said yes. And I was open to one more conversation at that time, right? And then Ty Software as well. Ty was one of the, they've been one of the a very long advertiser of mine as well. And it was very similar, right? It was the same thing. It was just one conversation. Vanessa and Sean reached out, and we just got something going. We created, we did an episode together, and then it just all spawned out from there. But that's all it takes, you guys. It's just one conversation. It's one interaction. And then that just builds up off of it, right? Just like, if you're going to build a business or you're going to build anything, it's one listener, it's one customer, it's one shipment, and then it compounds on top of that. It just takes a very, very long time. You just got to be willing to go out there and push that through. And, the power of networking, is the most underrated skill in business. Knowing people and getting out there and introducing yourself to as many people as possible is a superpower. Everybody who in your inner circle, outer circle, however you want to put it, everybody should know what you do. Everybody should know who you know as well, and just connect people. I think that is one of the most underrated skills that there is out there. So I think as, a lot of people are, thinking about what's next for them, whether it's, do I want to get in on content? Do I want to get in and start my own business? You got to be open to sucking for a very long time. You have to be open to talking to anybody and everybody, and networking nonstop. And you also have to know when you're in the shittiest of times in business, in the stuff that you don't talk about, the stuff that goes on in my head that I don't post about and stuff like that, you are always one conversation away from changing your life. You are one interaction away from changing your life. And you'll never know when it's going to happen, but you have to have faith that it's going to happen, because ultimately I know I'm doing what I was put on this earth to do. I know for a fact this is what God put me on this earth to do. And I talk about my faith often, and I will always talk about my faith in God. But I know that, and I can feel that in my core. And ultimately, no matter what, as crazy as everything can kind of get with uncertainty and everything else, there's always that eerie calmness that I know that I'm on the right path with it. So, that's kind of my little recap out there. I love doing all of this shit every single day, and I'm going to be home here for a while now, because I got a day job as well. But outside of that, the only other trips I'm going to be taking this year is to go visit our shippers that we work with. But other than that, you guys just get after it. Just start. All right. Just start and just go. And if you want something bad enough, you'll figure it out. Trust me, you will figure it out. There's a lot of uncertainty. Yes, but have that goal out there and just show up. And then when failure inevitably happens, you're just learning what not to do in little small increments. And then you make those changes. And then, like I said, 4 years into this shit, I actually now feel like I have a process and a system to follow that we can go out there. But that's going to be it for today, you guys. I got guests coming on the show on Thursday and Friday. As always, you guys, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.